Herb. Herb is a plant. I mean, herbs are good for everything. Herb.
Good evening. You made the trip to the Eugene Cannabis TV show, and we're filming this. It's a Memorial Day, one of the premier, I guess, veteran holidays. And earlier today, I went to wish somebody happy Memorial Day. Somehow that doesn't quite sound right, so I'll say I hope everybody's Memorial Day was a good one. Speaking of veterans, this is came up to the problem with veterans and PTSD has come up again. On July 6, 2010, there was a big breakthrough when our friend Michael Crowitz, he's with the Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access, talked to Robert A. Pretzel, who is the Undersecretary for Health, the Department of Veterans Affairs. And in the letter dated on that date, he writes that he says, "This is a follow-up response to your letter requesting clarification of the Veterans Health Administration's policy regarding the practice of prescribing opioid therapy for pain management for veterans who provide documentation of the use of medical marijuana in accordance with state law. If a veteran obtains and uses medical marijuana in a manner consistent with state law, testing positive for marijuana would not preclude the veteran from receiving opiates for pain management in a Department of Veterans Affairs facility. The veteran would need to inform his provider of the use of medical marijuana and of any other non-VA prescribed medications he or she is taking to ensure that all medications, including opioids, are prescribed in a safe manner. Standard pain management agreements would draw a clear distinction between the use of illegal drugs and legal medical marijuana. However, the discretion to prescribe or not prescribe opioids in conjunction with medical marijuana should be determined on clinical grounds and thus will remain the decision of the individual healthcare provider. The provider will take the use of medical marijuana into account in all prescribing decisions, just as the provider would any other medication. This is a case-by-case decision based upon the provider's judgment and the needs of the patient. Should you have any further questions, please contact blah, blah, blah. So that was a big breakthrough because some veterans have lost benefits, others have been threatened with it, and of course, many others have been living under the fear of it. So that seemed to clarify things some. So here, dated May 28th, this is also from Salem News, by the way. That's a great website for information, unbiased. That's salem-news.com. This is Dateline, Washington, D.C. White House statement on medical marijuana. Another stat back for veterans. The group Veterans for Medical Cannabis Access issued the following news release after receiving word that their long hours spent presenting scientific and medical evidence of the benefits of medical marijuana was simply rejected yet again. Relying on the wisdom of Gil Krolewski, the nation's drug czar, veterans are reminded on Memorial Day that their sacrifices only gain them a small amount of credibility, certainly not enough to allow them to use a plant that grows naturally out of the ground that is a miracle treatment for the survivor of wars and military violence for their nation who suffer PTSD, post-traumatic stress syndrome. Disorder, excuse me. Thousands of veterans requested the Obama administration to look into the reliable science now available showing exactly how cannabis works to alleviate suffering of veterans' pain and save the lives of veterans with brain injuries such as PTSD and therefore make appropriate changes in policy. According to Dr. Julie Holland, editor of the Pot Book and a medical doctor, there had been more suicides than combat fatalities by a ratio of 25-1. This, given how effectively cannabis works to save lives, is an unacceptable loss. Recent research has revealed two things of great importance. One is that suicide rates drop around the implementation of medical marijuana laws, and the other is that new research indicates similar brain changes from athletic head injuries, military head trauma, and brain changes from Alzheimer's and multiple sclerosis. New research available shows how a human body-wide set of control functions called the endogenous cannabinoid receptor system can be activated by the ingestion of cannabis to cause both neural protection and neural regenerative properties to help relieve these difficult to treat medical conditions. We veterans petitioned the Obama administration to allow United States disabled Army veterans access to medical marijuana to treat their PTSD. The White House response to our petition was very disappointing. We asked for a change in policy, to have our petition answered by the drug czar, an ex-policeman, is most appropriate given the drug czar is bound by law to only discuss current law and has no power to discuss policy change with the public. Even the lowest ranking staffer at the White House or anyone from the Veterans Health Authority would have been more appropriate. Al Byrne, retired naval officer and co-founder of VMCA, was blunt in his assessment of the White House concern for injured veterans. Vets have used cannabis for PTS since the Revolutionary War. We know what we need, and to be told by our president, the commander-in-chief, that he does not care about those he has sent to war by denying medicine to the wounded is unconscionable. The Veterans Administration is also now in direct conflict with the White House. According to the Veterans Affairs Undersecretary of Health in correspondence with our Executive Director, Micah Krauss, the provider will take the use of medical marijuana into account in all prescribing decisions, just as the provider would in the other medication. This is from the letter that I just read. The president, when asked why he doesn't do something positive about medical marijuana, he quoted in Rolling Stone magazine as saying, "I can't nullify congressional law. I can't ask the Justice Department to say, ignore completely a federal law that's on the books." If that is truly the president's position, it is either based upon ignorance of his power or he is playing politics. The president can do many things. The DEA was created by an executive order. The president could ask NIDA to stop blocking research, or he could ask HHS to finally allow the recommendations of the Institute of Medicine, or he could ask Congress to move forward on the issue, or he could even properly reschedule cannabis as a medicine by executive order. The president could do so many things, but instead seems to be sacrificing our nation's veterans. One irony of the drug czar's response to our petition is that his words seem to be lifted right from the IOM report of 1999 that was actually commissioned by the drug czar of that day, General McAfee. The IOM report did indeed say that cannabis holds great promise in the future as a pharmaceutical, but it then went on to say that we know enough about the plant material this is 1999, to give the whole plant material to those patients most in need of it right now. Don't veterans suffering and dying classify as patients in extreme need? Veterans for Medical Cannabis thought you should know of this shameful, ridiculous policy of ignorance. First, President Obama's administration ejected medical marijuana patients from the workplace. Then he threw them out of public housing, then took away their ability to buy a gun, then closed down their dispensaries, and now he has apparently set his sights on veterans. And this is, and speaking of PTSD, the state of Oregon has tried, I know we've tried at least twice, maybe more, but I know for a fact at least twice, to have PTSD added to the state of Oregon conditions, and been denied, which to a lot of us, and especially me, I'm extremely offended because the state of Oregon is making big money on the medical marijuana program. They're actually making money on the program, that's a fact. And then they turned, that was before they raised their fees. But they needed more money, so they turned around and raised the fees on the sickest group of people in the state, or one of them. they almost double the fees in most cases. So, and yet they can't allow people to use it for PTSD in the state of Oregon. Only one state, as far as I know at this point, does have it for PTSD is a condition for medical marijuana, and that is the state of New Mexico. So, which is where I was born, incidentally, but that's neither here nor there. So anyway, PTSD remains an issue, and especially with veterans, because we're having more and more coming back. I just heard on the news, I think it was last night, they just announced that 45% of the discharged veterans are putting in for medical assistance, medical treatment. So this thing that I've said for many years is that when these hawks, you know, they want to go Vietnam, they want to go over in Iraq and fight, they want to go to Afghanistan to fight. Now we're going to go over in perhaps Iran. Let's go fight over there. And what they don't think about is veteran care down the road. That can run into a lot of money when you start taking care of people with medical problems and for the rest of their lives, and I mean that is one heck of a cost. And I don't mean to be, I'm not begrudging them that they deserve it. I'm just saying we need to look at the total cost and look where we are now with Iraq and Afghanistan. But then that's a whole other issue. So anyway, hopefully the government will get their head out of you know where on the PTSD whole thing. And speaking of injustices, this is another one. This is again out of Washington, D.C. This is, let's see, Aaron, he says here, this is, oh yes, Clarence Aaron, there it is. Clarence Aaron is, why is Clarence Aaron still in federal prison? Aaron, linebacker at Southern University of Oregon, Southern University in Baton Rouge, introduced the brother of a drug supplier to a cocaine dealer he knew from his high school days in Mobile, and was present when a 9-pound cocaine deal went down. Despite his tangible involvement, when federal authorities busted the cocaine operation, Aaron ended up with by far the longest sentence of anyone involved, because the other players cooperated with the government and named him as a major player, and because he refused to testify against his friends. Now 43, he's becoming a poster child for yet another drug war inequity. So we'll be covering that more in the future. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this segment up, and we've got some more information on the next segment. So stay tuned, and thanks for dropping in. I'll be back.
Are you tired of following all the rules? Ready to let loose? Have a little fun? Sounds like you need to. Get high. And with Narcomex Incorporated, your direct-to-consumer drug trafficking solution, you can. Narcomex values your business. That's why we're your #1 supplier of drugs, and you're our #1 consumer. These billions can't be wrong. We work hard for your business and have killed not 1, not 2, but 3 Mexican police and 2 journalists just to keep you high with that very joint. Why, our commitment to keeping you supplied has killed over 17,000 people right next door. Traffickers, soldiers, journalists, prosecutors, you name it. We're that passionate about your business. We've even begun to destroy some of your favorite tropical beach destinations, because if you smoke enough at home, you don't even need a beach. But don't legalize it or grow it at home. Let us do the work for you. Sure, consumers boycotted evil companies, but there's no need to boycott Narcomex Incorporated, your direct-to-consumer drug trafficking solution, also offering heroin, meth, and cocaine. Narcomex Incorporated. Live a little, and forget others won't.
And we're back, just like a bad debt. Here we are again. I got some more information for you regarding cannabis and state laws and federal laws and the pursuing freedom. I got an interesting article here out of Oklahoma. All you do is shake your head when you start reading something like this. Remember, Oklahoma is the state that sentenced Foster. I can't think of his first name, but he was a medical, this is way early on, and he was a medical marijuana patient. Of course, they don't have a program, but anyway, he had almost, I think it was close to 100 plants, and they busted him for growing pot, and they gave him, I think it was 99 years or something like that. And about the same time, there was another case where some guy had killed his son, and I think he got like 6 years. So that's to give an example of Oklahoma. Foster, I can't think of his first name, but he is out, and that case has been resolved, thank heaven. But anyway, here we go. Oklahoma. Oklahoma governor signs a welfare drug test bill. The Oklahoma governor, Mary Fallin, last Wednesday signed into law a bill, House Bill 2388, that requires welfare applicants to be screened for possible drug use and drug tested upon suspicion they are using. They would be denied benefits if they test positive. The screening requirement is designed to surmount constitutional objections to mandatory suspicionless drug testing of public benefit applicants and recipients. In the last 2 years, Florida and Georgia have passed laws requiring mandatory suspicionless drug testing of welfare applicants. The Florida law has been blocked by a federal judge's temporary order as she considers whether to declare an unconstitutional violation of the Fourth Amendment prescription against warrantless searches. Civil liberties and civil rights advocates in Georgia have vowed similar action against the law there when it goes into effect July 1. An earlier Michigan attempt to impose suspicious drug testing of welfare recipients was found unconstitutional by a divided federal appeals court in 2003. That ruling was not appealed. Several other states have passed public benefits drug testing laws with a screening process to create reasonable suspicion that a given individual might be a drug user. This include Arizona and Missouri last year, and Utah and Tennessee this year. The Tennessee bill has yet to be signed by the governor, but he has said he will do so. None of these state laws have yet faced legal challenges. The Oklahoma law takes effect November 1 and is aimed at adults applying for the Temporary Assistance to Needy Families program. Applicants who refuse to take the drug test or who test positive will be denied benefits. Applicants who test positive and then undergo a drug treatment program at their own expense can reapply for benefits after 6 months. Child-only cases and cases where the parent is underage would not have to be drug tested. If a parent is denied benefits, the bill allows for payments to be made to an alternative payee. Under the amendment passed in the Senate, the state will pay for the cost of drug testing. The bill originally called for applicants to pick up the tab. So it'll be tested, and we'll see how it goes. The Oklahoma Democrats opposed the bill, calling it poor policy and mean-spirited during earlier debates, and Senator Tom Ivester questioned why only one population that receives state assistance should be subjected to drug testing. But their Republican colleagues weren't listening. So it's interesting. When I think of drug testing, I always think of many times when I hear people have to take a drug test, I always like to ask them, well, did the person that physically told you to take a drug test, do they take a drug test? And very few answers have ever been yes. It's usually no. So it's always interested me how one person can send another person out for drug tests, but they don't have to submit to themselves. So I thought that's kind of makes it smell a little bit, I believe, at least in my opinion. So then, we have legalization. Now, this is the year 2012 is a presidential election year. Therefore, this is, by all political standards, the best time to get a legalization initiative on the ballot because we'll have the highest voter turnout, and that is favorable to marijuana legalization. So 2012 is the real target. Then we're going to be looking for another 4 years before we can really hit it, have a good chance again. So we have an article here from stopthedrugwar.org. And by the way, this is an excellent website. I recommend it highly. They have an email list that I subscribe to, and I would recommend everybody else to find out news stories of what's going on all over the United States, well, the world for that matter, but especially the United States, of course. But anyway, this is about the status report, statewide marijuana legalization initiatives. As summer draws near, the election picture when it comes to statewide marijuana legalization initiative is becoming a bit clearer. At the beginning of the year, activists in 8 states undertook efforts to get initiatives on the ballot, but the field has been winnowed. With polling this year starting to show majority support for legalization and regulation, 2012 could be the year that legalization actually wins, and voters in at least 2 states, Colorado and Washington, will have the chance to make that happen. Initiatives in those 2 states have already been approved for the ballot, and the election campaigns are underway. 4 separate and competing initiatives from a divided marijuana movement came up short in the past few weeks in California, with the Show Me Cannabis regulation initiative in Missouri, long on heart but short on funds, gave up the ghost for this year earlier this month. Activists in both states are planning to return to the fray in 2014. That leaves 4 states, Michigan, Montana, Oregon, and Nebraska, where the initiatives are still in the signature gathering phase. Within a few weeks, we will know for sure whether any of them will make it on the ballot in November. But as of this week, Oregon appears best placed to join Colorado and Washington in the fall. Here's how it's looking for the 4 states where the initiatives are still trying to qualify for the ballot. Michigan. The Committee for a Safer Michigan is currently circulating petitions for its constitutional amendment to repeal marijuana prohibition. The committee has until July 9th to gather the 322,609 valid voter signatures needed to qualify for the November ballot. So far, it has only handed in about 35,000, but organizers say many signature-bearing petitions are still out in the field. The number of signatures we have in hand is significantly lower than the real number, said Brandy Zink. We have 2,500 volunteers out there with petitions, so you can tell by the numbers that they're pretty far down. Montana first. It's the same group of activists and supporters who last summer and fall organized the successful signature gathering campaign to put the IR 124 medical marijuana initiative on the November 2012 ballot to undergo the legislature's destruction of the state medical marijuana distribution network, is also working on the legalization initiative, Constitutional Initiative number 110. It would add 2 sentences to the state constitution. Adults have the right to responsibly purchase, consume, produce, and possess marijuana subject to reasonable limitations, regulations, and taxation, except for actions that endanger minors, children, or public safety. No criminal offenses or penalty of this state shall apply to such activities. To qualify for the ballot, campaigners need to gather some 45,000 valid voter signatures, and Montana law also requires that these signatures include 10% of voters in at least 40 of the 100 of the state's electoral districts. So anyway, they said we have about 20,000 so far, and we're gearing up for a primary day on June 5th. So Colorado is working on it. It's like a little bit further ahead of Michigan. Nebraska, amend the state constitution so that any law regarding the private, non-commercial cultivation and consumption of marijuana would be forbidden. Any current laws. Okay, they need about 50,000 signatures, but they don't have a count here. So, but anyway, here we are to Oregon. This is the hot one. This is, of course, what we care about more than anything. In Oregon, 2 separate initiatives appeared poised to make the ballot with 6 weeks left to gather signatures. The Oregon Cannabis Taxation Act, OCTA initiative, which would allow for the legal cultivation and sale of marijuana, needs 87,213 valid signatures to make the ballot. The Oregon Marijuana Policy Initiative Constitutional Amendment, which would give adult Oregonians, the constitutional right to possess marijuana has to reach a higher threshold of 116,000. Both measures will have until July 6th to turn in signatures, but also face a Friday deadline for turning in enough signatures to qualify for early verification by the Secretary of State's office. The early verification allows campaigns to know whether they have to come to know whether they have come up short because of invalid signatures, and gives them 6 weeks to make up the difference. Both initiatives appear to be well placed to do so. Side note here, by the way, Colorado, they came up short in the same type of thing, came up short, and they really kicked it in the hind end in those next few weeks and actually made it on the ballot. As of Sunday, we had 109,000 signatures on hand. Paul Stanford, the primary source behind Octa, said that's 127% of the total, assuming an invalidation rate of 30 to 35%. We need to turn in 132 to 136,000. We're getting about 10,000 a week, and we have 6.5 weeks left, he said. Stanford has largely funded the Octa campaign through his multi-state chain of medical marijuana clinics. And then the other initiative is, which is we need, this is OMPI, we need 116,300 signatures turned in for early approval, and we currently have 132,000. So they've already got enough for the early approval. We are going to make the ballot, no question about it. The Secretary of State will disqualify some percentage, so we're aiming for 185,000, and we'll be collecting up until the deadline. Both men said that in the event both measures make the ballot, they would complement, not contradict each other. The OMPI is a constitutional amendment that requires the state regulate cannabis, and our Octa initiative would fulfill the regulatory requirement and save the legislature from contentious debate. While Wolf agreed that the two measures would complement each other, he also expressed concern about mixed messaging. Still having two marijuana initiatives on the ballot is kind of a problem activists in other states wish they had. So, really good news in Oregon. If you see those initiatives out there, sign them. If you'd like to gather signatures, either as paid or as a volunteer, you can contact us through the show. Get on the internet, do a search. I appreciate it. You got DanK here, and I've been your host, and I'll be here your host next time. Goodbye, good morning, or good evening.